I sat perfectly still in the hard wooden chair of the probate courtroom watching my daughter-in-law perform. Chloe wore a conservative beige dress and kept dabbing her dry eyes with a tissue. She stood before the judge, speaking in the soft, trembling voice of a woman burdened by tragedy. She claimed I was losing my mind. She told the court I was paranoid, erratic, and utterly incapable of managing my own life. Beside her, my son Mark stared at his shoes and nodded in agreement. They were petitioning for emergency guardianship. If the judge agreed, Chloe and Mark would gain total control over my estate, a portfolio of property and life insurance left by my late husband, totaling roughly $3.2 million. Chloe painted a tragic picture. She described how I had changed how I locked doors inside my own home and how I recklessly canceled household accounts for no reason. She looked at me with a mixture of fake pity and greedy confidence. She truly believed the money was already in her purse. What she did not know was that the manila folder resting on my lap contained no complex legal motions. I had not hired a high-priced attorney to fight them. I did not need a lawyer to prove I was sane. I only needed a few basic receipts, a flash drive, and a piece of paper I had signed 3 days prior. The judge listened patiently, taking notes. When Chloe finished her tearful monologue, the courtroom fell silent. They expected me to burst into tears or shout defensive insults. Instead, I simply adjusted my glasses and waited. I was 68 years old, and I had buried a husband after a 10-year battle with illness. A greedy daughter-in-law was not going to break me. I was about to show them exactly how clear my mind really was. To understand how we ended up in that courtroom, we have to go back 6 months. Shortly after my husband passed away, Mark and Chloe asked to move into my 4-bedroom house in the Seattle suburbs. They claimed it was a temporary arrangement to help me through the grief, while they saved for a down payment on their own place. I knew my son. Mark was passive, allergic to hard work, and easily directed. Chloe was the one steering the ship. I agreed to let them stay for 6 months. Within 3 weeks, Chloe began treating my home like her personal kingdom. It started with small, dismissive actions. I came down to the kitchen one morning to find my favorite loose-leaf tea thrown in the trash. Chloe stood by the coffee maker, sipping from my favorite mug. "I tossed that old tea, Felicia," she announced, not bothering to look at me. "Caffeine isn't good for your heart at your age. We need to keep you calm." I did not raise my voice. I did not argue about boundaries. I simply walked out, drove to the specialty grocer, bought 3 new tins of my tea, and placed them in my study. Then I went to the hardware store, bought a heavy-duty deadbolt, and installed it on my study door myself. When Chloe tried to enter my study later that evening to borrow my printer, she found the knob locked. She knocked loudly. I ignored it. She complained to Mark, who awkwardly asked me why I had locked the room. "Because it is my room," I replied, sipping my tea. Chloe did not like that answer. She realized I was not going to play the role of the frail, compliant widow fading into the background. Since she could not control my space, she decided to shift her focus to my finances. A month into their stay, Chloe cornered me in the living room with a proposal. She suggested we open a joint household checking account. She argued it would make buying groceries and household supplies easier, saving me the stress of running errands. "You shouldn't be driving in heavy traffic anyway, Felicia," she insisted, offering a patronizing smile. "Let us take care of you." I saw right through it, but I decided to give her enough rope to hang herself. I went to my bank, opened a separate, isolated checking account, and transferred $500 into it. I handed Chloe the debit card. I made sure it was completely disconnected from my main trust and savings. For 2 weeks, she bought groceries. Then the real spending began. I logged into the banking app on my tablet and watched the transactions roll in. $80 at a cosmetics store, $250 at a high-end hair salon downtown, $40 at a gourmet coffee shop. She was testing the waters, assuming I did not know how to check digital statements. Instead of confronting her yelling or demanding my money back, I took a very simple action. I clicked a button on my app and transferred the remaining balance back to my private savings. Then I called the bank and permanently closed the joint account. The next afternoon, Chloe returned home furious. She slammed the front door and marched into the kitchen, her face flushed red. "My card declined at the supermarket," she snapped, dropping her empty, reusable bags on the counter. "It was humiliating. Did you forget to put the money in?" I looked up from my newspaper, completely unbothered. "No." I closed the account. "My money is for household groceries, Chloe, not for your blonde highlights." Her jaw tightened. She spun around and stormed up the stairs. That night, I heard them whispering in their bedroom. For the first time, I heard the phrase, "She's losing her grip." Once Chloe realized she could not freely access my cash, her strategy changed. She decided that if she could not trick me, she would have to prove I was incompetent. The gaslighting began a few days later, subtle at first, then increasingly bold. I would leave my reading glasses on the kitchen island, and an hour later, they would be gone. I would find them stuffed inside the refrigerator. My car keys would vanish from the hook by the door and reappear under the sofa cushions. "You're getting so forgetful, Felicia," Chloe would sigh, handing me my keys with a look of mock concern. "Maybe we should get you evaluated. It's not safe for you to be driving if you can't even remember where you put your keys." Mark backed her up. "Mom, Chloe's right. You've been very scattered lately. It's okay, it happens at your age." I knew exactly what they were doing. They were building a narrative. They wanted a paper trail of my decline. I did not cry. I did not waste my breath trying to convince them I was sane. Instead, I went online and ordered 2 tiny, motion-activated nanny cameras. When they were out for a walk, I positioned one on the bookshelf in the living room and another facing the kitchen island. They synced directly to my phone. 2 days later, I left my keys on the counter intentionally. I went up to my bedroom, opened the app, and watched the live feed. Sure enough, Chloe walked into the kitchen, glanced around, picked up my keys, and shoved them deep inside a bag of flour in the pantry. I smiled. I saved the video clip to a secure cloud folder. Then I calmly walked downstairs, went straight to the pantry, pulled my keys out of the flour, dusted them off, and walked out the front door to go shopping. Chloe watched me leave, her eyes wide with confusion. The game was on. Their frustration grew when the gaslighting failed to make me doubt myself. Chloe realized she needed legal leverage. One Tuesday evening, Mark came into the living room holding a stack of papers. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Mom, Chloe and I were talking." He began, avoiding my eyes. "With everything going on and your memory slipping, we think it would be smart to set up a power of attorney, just in case something happens to you. It's just to protect you." He held out a pen. I took the documents from his hand. I read the first page. It granted Mark, and by extension Chloe, full authorization to manage my bank accounts, sell my property, and make my medical decisions. I did not shout. I did not deliver a dramatic speech about betrayal. I simply stood up, walked over to the paper shredder in the corner of my study, fed the document into the slot, and let the machine chew it to pieces. "I am perfectly capable of managing my own life," I stated. That night, I opened my laptop and reviewed my household budget. For the past 6 months, I had been paying the water, electricity, internet, and even Mark's cell phone bill out of habit. That ended immediately. I logged into the provider portals and removed my credit card from the auto-pay settings for their phones. I changed the Wi-Fi password. The next morning, Mark came out of his room holding his phone. "Mom, the internet is down, and my phone says service suspended." I poured my coffee, taking a slow sip. "I know. If you are adult enough to try and take over my estate, you are adult enough to pay your own bills." The free ride is over. Chloe glared at me from the hallway. I saw a dangerous flash in her eyes. 3 days later, a process server knocked on my front door and handed me the summons for the guardianship hearing. The petition was a masterclass in manipulation. Chloe had convinced Mark to sign an affidavit, claiming I was emotionally unstable, suffering from severe memory loss, locking doors out of paranoia, and financially reckless. They requested emergency conservatorship to protect my $3.2 million estate before I squandered it. Most mothers would have broken down in tears. Many would have called an expensive attorney, launching a massive, costly legal battle that could drag on for years and drain the very accounts they were trying to protect. I did neither. I did not need a lawyer to prove a simple truth. I needed practical leverage. While Mark and Chloe were at work believing I was at home panicking, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my bank, ensuring all my accounts required 2-factor biometric authentication that only my phone and fingerprint could unlock. The second was to a moving company. The third call was to a trusted real estate agent I had known for 20 years. "David," I said into the phone, "I want to sell the house. Fast. Cash buyer preferred as is condition. I don't want a public listing." Because the housing market in our area was booming. David had an investor walking through my property 2 days later while Mark and Chloe were out at a dinner party. The investor made a cash offer slightly below market value, but it came with a 14-day closing period. I accepted immediately. I spent the next week quietly packing my valuables, jewelry, and important documents. I rented a beautiful modern 2-bedroom condo closer to the city center, paying a year's rent up front. I moved my essentials into the new place piece by piece in the trunk of my car. Mark and Chloe noticed nothing. They were too busy discussing what kind of boat they would buy once they had control of my money. I let them dream. I was busy packing reality into cardboard boxes. That brings us back to the courtroom. Chloe stood before the judge, delivering her final, tearful plea. "Your Honor," she sniffled, wiping her eyes. "We love Felicia, but she is confused. She canceled our family cell phone plans in a fit of rage. She locks herself in her study. She hides her keys in the pantry and blames us. She is a danger to herself, and we just want to keep her safe." Mark finally spoke up, his voice weak. "It's true, Your Honor. My mom isn't herself anymore." The judge, a stern woman with graying hair, looked over the petition. Then she turned her gaze to me. I was sitting straight, my hands folded neatly over my plain manila folder. "Mrs. Rhodes," the judge addressed me, "these are serious allegations. It is highly unusual for a respondent in a conservatorship hearing of this magnitude to appear without counsel. Do you have a lawyer present?" I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my slacks. "I do not need a lawyer, Your Honor. I am fully capable of speaking for myself." Chloe shot Mark a smug look. She thought my lack of representation was proof of my arrogance and declining mental state. She thought she had already won. "Very well," the judge replied, leaning back. "Your family claims you are financially incompetent and suffering from severe memory issues. How do you respond?" I opened my folder. "I respond with facts, Your Honor. I have not lost my mind. I have simply stopped allowing them to use my wallet." I walked forward and handed the clerk 3 items: a printed spreadsheet of my daily household ledgers, a USB flash drive, and a stack of bank statements. "Everything you need to know about my competence is right there." The judge put on her reading glasses and examined the paperwork. "In that folder," I explained calmly, "you will find the bank records for a joint account my daughter-in-law convinced me to open. You will see that the only erratic spending was done by her at a luxury salon. You will see my personal ledger balanced perfectly down to the penny, proving I manage my own taxes, insurance, and medical bills without missing a single payment." Chloe shifted uncomfortably. She's obsessing over pennies. Your Honor, that's part of the paranoia. I ignored her and pointed to the flash drive. On that drive is video footage from a security camera I installed in my own home. It clearly shows Chloe picking up my car keys and burying them in a bag of flour right before telling me I had memory loss. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being set up. The courtroom was dead quiet. Mark turned to look at his wife, his eyes wide with shock. Chloe's fake tears instantly vanished, replaced by a look of panicked realization. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The judge plugged the drive into her monitor, clicked a few times, and watched the footage in silence. When she looked back up, her expression was ice cold. She fixed her eyes on Chloe. "Mrs. Rhodes," the judge said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "You claim your mother-in-law is entirely financially incompetent. You claim she is a danger to her own estate." "Yes," Chloe whispered, her confidence crumbling. The judge picked up the final piece of paper I had placed in the folder. "Then I have one simple question for you," the judge stated. "If she is so incompetent, why are you currently living entirely off her charity? And how did she manage to successfully negotiate and close the sale of the house you are currently sleeping in?" Chloe's confident face turned pale. All the blood rushed from her cheeks. She gripped the edge of the defendant's table. "Sold," Mark stammered, stepping forward. "What do you mean, sold? That's our house." "No, Mark," I answered, turning to face my son directly. "It was my house. The deed was in my name alone. I sold it to a cash investor. The transaction closed yesterday afternoon." I handed a copy of the final closing documents to the bailiff, who passed them to Mark. He stared at the signature line in pure disbelief. "You see, Your Honor?" I continued, addressing the bench. "They did not file this petition because I am sick. They filed it because I stopped paying their cell phone bills, locked them out of my private study, and refused to sign over power of attorney. They wanted control of my $3 million because they are too lazy to earn their own." The judge had heard enough. She didn't need medical experts or psychological evaluations. The practical reality was staring her right in the face. A woman suffering from severe dementia does not quietly execute a flawless six-figure real estate transaction behind her family's back. "This petition is completely without merit," the judge declared, striking her gavel. "It is a blatant attempt at financial abuse. Case dismissed. And Mrs. Rhodes," she glared at Chloe, "if you ever file a frivolous petition in my court again, I will hold you in contempt." We walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun. Chloe was hyperventilating in the hallway. Mark looked like a man who had just stepped out of a car crash. They had walked in expecting to take control of my entire life. They walked out with absolutely nothing. And the worst part for them had not even happened yet. Friday morning arrived with clear skies. I stood on the driveway of my old house watching the new owner's representatives measure the front lawn. My own moving truck had left an hour earlier, taking the last of my curated belongings to my secure, quiet condo downtown. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Mark and Chloe were frantically shoving clothes into black garbage bags. Because the house was officially sold, the new owners had given them exactly 48 hours to vacate the premises. They had no savings, no down payment, and nowhere to go. Mark walked out the front door carrying a plastic bin of shoes. He looked exhausted. He stopped a few feet away from me. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "please, we don't have enough for a deposit on an apartment right now. Can we just stay with you for a few weeks, just until we get on our feet?" I looked at the boy I had raised. I felt a flicker of sadness, but I did not let it control me. A mother's love should not be a tool for her own destruction. My new condo only has space for me, I said calmly. And I like it that way. Chloe marched out behind him carrying a lamp. She wouldn't even look at me. Her pride was shattered, her control entirely broken. But what are we supposed to do? Mark begged. I opened the door to my car and slid into the driver's seat. I rolled down the window and looked at my son one last time. You are 32 years old, Mark, I replied. Figure it out. I rolled up the window and drove away. I did not look back in the rearview mirror. I did not cry. For the first time in months, my chest felt incredibly light. I had protected my home, my money, and my sanity without firing a single legal shot. I just used the truth and a very good lock.